Hello and welcome to another episode of Ashley Haden's Political Breakdown, a show where me and some guests talk about the week's news. No one watches it because we understand that there's nuance in news, but we don't necessarily talk about it. My guests this week are...
Edward Axel.
And...
Declan Kennedy.
Fantastic. Right. I want to start with the first piece of news because we're going to start light. Products from Israeli settlements in occupied Palestine territories must be clearly labelled as such when on sale in EU countries. EU High Court has said this week. So they've ruled that anything in Israeli occupied territory or Palestinian occupied territories must be labelled as such. Israel aren't happy about this. They say it's going to create people going about and not buying these. Do we think it's a good or bad view to do this for?
Run that by me again. That sounds quite complicated. So, anything created or grown or assembled?
Anything produced in Israeli-occupied territories in Palestine have to be clearly marked that they are produced in places that are occupied, illegally by Israel.
That's quite an odd situation to be in, I think, if you're a manufacturer, isn't it? Because it's like, well, it's not really my choice that an occupying force is here, but I still have to inform people this was kind of made under duress. Is that? Am I getting that right?
I think it's mainly for Israeli.
I don't think it's quite that. Essentially, the occupied territories. I'm presuming the idea behind it is if it's made by Israelis in Israeli occupied territory, and therefore, as a consequence, it highlights that this was made in Palestinian territory. Arguably illegally.
Yes, because it's Israeli producers claim that this distinction would encourage a boycott of the goods, which could be right. We've had it in this country where a number of different cities and towns have put in laws that it's allowed to boycott, but the government have said that it would be illegal for any particular town or city to actually boycott. Are you for or against the boycotting of Israeli products because of the occupation of Palestine?
No.
I find it quite tricky. I feel like we've been here before, isn't it? In the sort of 80s and 90s, you had, was it apples grown in South Africa? They had to be Cape apples. They sort of... there was sort of
and there was a big boycott of Barclays Bank. Do you remember that when I was a student?
Yeah.
Nobody banks at Barclays because it had a huge South African arm.
Yeah.
And there were...
you two are going to be able to talk about stuff that I have no fucking idea about.
This is going to be retro. This for this
retro.
week. Yeah. Retro oppression.
Retro oppression. I've got mixed feelings on Israel, and I think a lot of people do actually.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the views on Israel, that everything about it is controversial, and the problem is that it's easy to appear weak on the subject.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's not straightforward.
Well, I said at the start, there's a nuance.
Yes.
We don't necessarily have to cover them, but we can do.
There are grey areas. The argument has huge grey areas, And the problem with grey areas is that they're not black or white.
Yes, I mean, like the EU. Yeah.
Wise words,
I mean,
everyone.
Christ, I mean,
Wise words.
I feel like we're sort of doing more of a bit of fun football punditry than we are actually political analysis.
Can we have that on a T-shirt soon?
Yeah.
I feel like the black and white areas is the grey.
Because the EU has constantly spoken out against the settlement expansion by Israel and says that the policy undermines the effort to create a Palestinian state.
Yes.
Now there's an argument to suggest that is good. Now with the thing with this,
I would argue with you. Yeah, I don't think the territory should be occupied. I don't think they should be occupied.
And you have to start coming up with new and inventive ways, and not boycotting certainly isn't a fucking new way. But you do have to come up with something that isn't just, well, either ignore it or bomb it. There has to be another option.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I will say that the regulation is only advisory and cannot be easily enforced.
But
it is. I mean, really.
This was the thing about South Africa was it gathered traction.
Yeah.
You know, and it over the years, it sort of snowballed, and there was. They were genuinely hurt by a lot of the boycotting.
It is an odd situation, isn't it? Because just as a tangent to this, I think if I was an occupying or invading force, it seems odd to worry about, people aren't buying our apples. Yeah, well, maybe don't invade places then. Maybe that's the issue.
But is that not why something like a boycott, as you say, like it actually hurt South Africa? And it's not necessarily even just the monetary effects that it could have.
Mm-hmm.
It is like put your back up, almost shame you into doing it, because there's very little else you can do. But if you start knocking someone's pride and saying, well, I mean, no, we're not going to, just because you're doing all of this, then there is always a chance of them going, now, I really do want to be liked, though.
Well, precisely, yes.
Yeah. And there's also pressure from within as well. The minute you sort of impose sanctions or any boycott, it begins the tricky part. I think this is where the nuance comes in. And I'm very much your go-to guy for nuance. Here comes Declan, they say, with his nuanced view. Whenever I'm about.
It's Mr. Nuance in town.
Better not have any hard, definite conclusions while he's around.
That is going to be a new comedy character, Comedy Unleashed, isn't it? Here comes
the thing is, he never just reaches the end of a joke because he can never conclude anything. But it is that thing of like once you get into that realm of sanction boycott, it does actually start to affect. Like I was thinking about this isn't the same thing at all, but it's the nearest thing I'm reaching for with my subtle and nuanced view. When we imposed sanctions on Iraq, it had an impact on healthcare for people in Iraq. And that sort of became quite ambiguous in the sense of, well, who are we really hurting here? Because I imagine, the people in power probably aren't that bothered if ordinary people start dying. So I don't know. I mean, in this instance, I don't know if that applies, but...
Well, I mean, putting sanctions on, like, when we put sanctions on Russia, and, as you say, like, Afghanistan, Syria, the amount of sanctions we've done, it don't affect the rich and the people in power.
I was going to say, I can't imagine anyone in Russia going, oh no, Britain's not buying anything. Oh, this is
I actually don't agree.
No?
For example, sanctions are a practical way of opposing something.
Yeah, certainly.
And you have to be able to oppose things.
Yeah.
You were talking earlier about riots in Iran, about petrol shortages, and that does have an effect.
Yeah, if you can get to a point where the sanctions are such that the people rise up against the people in government. Although at the moment, is there a government in Israel? Have they come to a conclusion yet? I don't think
there is a government right now.
No, because they tried, and then Netanyahu tried to get. He had a minority, I think, who tried to get a government together, and he couldn't.
Gosh, imagine that. Imagine living in a country where you're just not sure who's going to be the government.
But this is the great thing about politics at the moment: is no one can form a government. No one can.
It's
no
amazing.
one agrees. No one agrees with anything.
Look, it was Spain this week who had on Sunday they had their elections, and then it was a minority that had to form a majority, and it is the left and the far left, Podemos, and
Right.
The Socialist Party, I think, and everyone else is very angry of going, oh well, we're not sure if we like this. You go, well, you don't really get a choice, mate. They've come together and they've said, well, we'll do an agreement. Although that agreement hasn't been fully signed yet. But you're right. No one's getting a majority anywhere at the moment.
No.
It's beautiful.
It's unclear. Everything's unclear.
It's fucking lovely.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone should look over at Germany to see how to do a coalition, because they're very good at a coalition.
Yeah, and the political system is designed for coalitions, isn't it?
Yes. Well, I mean, if we're going to go on to elections, it would be rude, would it not, to speak to the closest one to home. First question would be, are we ever going to get a useful government whilst we still have first past the post?
Wow, start with the easy ones, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
I didn't realise it. I informed you all this was going to be a fluff hour.
I was hoping for light chat. Light chat.
If you want a light chat, go on to Loose Women.
Yeah, on the week's news, you know.
No, this is a political breakdown. We discuss what is happening and we solve nothing.
Yeah,
I think, would it make a difference in an era where it just seems to be cults of personalities? Because who do you vote for when you vote? As you said in your last edition, I think, do you vote for the MP or do you vote for the values of the party who are standing generally?
Thanks for watching one.
That's my pleasure, mate.
But the wooden, if you had a system of proportional representation,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have the same cult of personality, because you would be voting for everybody would be voting for a minority view, wouldn't they? I mean, it wouldn't be the same form of political system under a proportional representation.
I think you'd have more ideas because you'd be able to take them more seriously. Like the Green Party, if the Green Party now come up with an idea and say, well, this is what we think, you're going, isn't that sweet? It's delightful. It's like a puppy pissing outside. Like, it's fucking delightful, but it's pointless. They're never going to get into power. They're going to have one MP. They potentially may get a second, but they're never going to get into power to get any of their ideas done. They're never going to do anything. Whereas if there was a proportional representation where there was a chance of them actually having a say, because more people would actually look at Greens and say, so this is what they're saying, I actually like this, I'm going to vote for them. Whereas now, like, if I vote for the Green Party, which I probably will do this year, it's a wasted vote.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm in Tower Hamlets, that's where I live, and it's like Bethnal Green and something or other, and got a Labour MP last time, won it by 74%.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it doesn't matter where I vote. It doesn't matter how I vote.
No, that's
It's
fair.
going to.
I totally get that. I totally get that. The reason why the first past the post political system has worked.
That's a bold claim.
No, but the reason it just doesn't work at the moment.
Yeah.
But it has worked in the past because it produces decisive governments. So a government with a decent majority can get things done. Whereas the issue with proportional representation is that it's endless compromise and nothing gets done. You know, everything is a deal. Everything is a trade-off. And the first past the post system, when you've got a majority, so Tony Blair had huge majorities, Mrs. Thatcher had huge majorities. When you've got a huge majority, you can get things done without the same
compromise.
You can just get things done. and you don't have to. You don't have to endlessly be negotiated. It's not a negotiation.
I just feel like any political system we have now is just hamstrung by the fundamental thing of how many people actually turn out to vote. And I think that's something that has been in decline for many years. And it's just how do you persuade people it's worthwhile?
But it's increasing the number of votes. The proportion of people voting is increasing.
Okay.
More people voted for the referendum than anything else.
But that's the referendum. That's because
you can't claim that because in 2017 the election, you didn't have the same numbers as you had in the referendum. You still had I think it was 36% or something like that voted.
I'd suspect you'll get a lot more people voting this time.
Would depend. No, I mean one of the factors about this election is it is a winter election. They picked that very specifically, and a Christmas election. Like we need to make Christmas more shit. How can we do it? Let's have an election.
Yeah.
And I don't think. I mean, there's so many problems with that. I don't think you could do much more to put off old people voting if you just had the election during a diagnosis murder marathon. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
and also, it feels like there's been a strategy to really wear people down by just constantly calling an election.
I think that's life, though.
Well, no.
Well, yeah, life does. But you understand what I'm saying?
I would contest that because what you're saying is you think there's a plan. I don't think there is any plan. I just don't think there's any plan at all.
I'm not so much a plan, strategy. I don't know what the word is. I know what you mean. I don't want to be like, "Hey, black helicopters, man," because it's like conspiracy theories are just a comfort blanket. In the end, it's there. It's preferable to realizing what you've just said, which is like nobody knows what they're doing. It's all panic and fuss and bother. But it does feel, just as a tangent, and this is where my nuance comes in, have either of you guys seen The Rise and Rise of Michael Rimmer?
No.
Film with Peter Cook, which has been reappraised in recent years. Actually reappraised when Tony Blair came to power, because it wasn't a hit when it was released, but it considers a central character who sort of games the system, starts off as a market researcher, games the system until he becomes Prime Minister. And one of the things in that film, one of the things he does is, as he's getting to power, he constantly sends out questionnaires, to the point where people are just really, really sick of answering questions or having to decide things. So when an election comes along, it's like he's able to just glide into power at the climax of the film.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that apathy has been prevalent for some time, but we first passed a post.
So who do you think will win the election?
I think the Tories are going to win. The question is whether or not they win by a majority. That is it. That is literally it.
Spoiler alert: Boris has won. We're in the end game now, Tony. This is a version of Infinity Wars where we've had the Thanos snap, and everybody's just gone, well, it's the will of the people now. We better just see it through.
Do you think he's won? Do you think he's won? Nobody's arguing that he's going to get the most seats. But the question is he going to get a majority?
See, now that's it.
If he doesn't get a majority, then technically the Rebel Alliance, and I love that word, the Rebel Alliance, because it's all Star Wars, and they're the good guys. The Rebel Alliance can form a coalition, and if that happens, that would be just so cool.
There would be something impressive if there was a coalition between SNP, Labour, Lib Dem, Greens. You'd have a fucking Plaid Cymru, fucking DUP and Sinn Féin.
Positive waves, guys.
Sinn Féin, that is retro. That is, we're really in.
Sinn Féin are not going to. This is the bizarre thing about Sinn Féin is they are just not going to do it. They're not going to. They're going to elect their MPs, and they're not going to participate.
No, but they're not standing in a couple of places in Northern Ireland.
Aren't they?
No, they've said, they've come out and they've said that we're not standing in. I think it's a part of Belfast. They're not standing because they want Remain MPs in.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I mean, it says something. I really hate to say it, but it really does say something when Sinn Féin are the fucking moral compass of British politics. They're going off for fuck's sake. With regards to Tories. We'll move past that.
I was going to say, Northern Irish politics, let's not.
No, but maybe. Yeah, look, anyway.
But with regards to getting a majority, there are things to consider, like the amount of seats that Tories are going to lose in Scotland.
Yeah.
Potentially all of them. So let's say they've got 8 seats. I think it's just 7 or 8.
That's not a foregone conclusion.
I was going to say, do you reckon it feels a lot like Scotland has been moving more towards Tories?
My argument would be, this is the. Everybody's talking about seismic ructions and how the Tories are finished in Scotland and they're going to lose all their seats. My argument would be is in Scotland the argument is about independence, and the reason why the Tories won those seats in those places was because they were against independence. Those seats were against independence, and that argument hasn't changed. In fact, it's got more pressing.
That's another.
But if you've got people who are against independence, if they realise that the Tories are for that, yet want to get rid of the country from Europe, which is against what Scotland voted for.
We don't know which areas. We don't know precisely. It's not forensic.
I mean, if we had the data in front of us, and there is the data out there of different places where they voted. You can go to from fucking town to town to town to town to town to find out how everyone voted.
Okay. We'll find out. Is the answer? But
retrospectively,
but the point I'm making is it doesn't necessarily follow that they're going to be completely. There are all sorts of assumptions that the pollsters have made that don't necessarily follow.
Yeah.
There are a number of really big questions about how people are going to vote, which is Labour heartlands. How are Labour heartlands going to leave voting? Labour heartlands going to vote. Yeah. How are the Scottish Tory seats going to vote? Yeah. How are the Remain Conservatives, or historically Remain Conservatives, going to vote? And no one knows the answer to that. But the question really boils down to, what effect that's going to have and how big that effect's going to be.
I mean, what more does Boris need to do to lose votes, though?
He can't lose votes. I honestly think he can't.
I don't think he can.
I don't think he can do anything at this point. I mean, people just seem to.
We're at a point he's going around he's going around up north, and I have not seen anyone, any politician, and this is something that is brand new, really, that you can have a politician walk around, and this didn't even happen to May. This is something that only happens to Johnson, where he's walking around and literally everyone's saying, "Get out of my town" or "fuck off."
I think there's two things. There's two things about the Conservatives that's interesting. Firstly, it doesn't matter because
it genuinely doesn't, does it? But Boris can do anything at this point. He could put sherbet in a dolphin's blowhole. Yeah. People would still vote for him.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He could flush a nun into space.
Yeah,
People are still going to vote for him.
Yeah, because they all know he's an idiot. They all know. Everybody knows he's got no real moral compass. Everybody knows he's untrustworthy. But the reality is, his policy is clear. He wants to get Britain out of Europe, and I everybody trusts that he actually wants to do that.
Yeah, but he didn't manage it. He's already lied to everyone.
Yeah, but that doesn't really quite matter because.
Why doesn't it matter?
It doesn't matter because I think it very fundamentally he's spoken to something in the English character. That by being amoral, by giving a show of I don't really care what you think, he's actually legitimising for a lot of people. It's like, well, I don't have to care then. I can be as racist as I like. I can call people in hijabs letterboxes, and that's what they respond to. It's like, finally, I've got a chance to be an arsehole.
Well, it's the Trumps, isn't it? It's the same. Yeah. It's the same attraction as Trump had, which is, he's a comedy character. It's like Nigel Farage is a comedy character.
Yeah.
And they're cardboard cutout.
Just to underscore that point as well that you've made, I really want to mention this because I thought this is extraordinary and it's a real benchmark of how politics is different now. But there's an exchange. Bless the Guardian for reporting this as news. But he was canvassing yesterday. At the time of recording, he was canvassing yesterday, and while people were talking about seriously, he was having a discussion with school children about the Incredible Hulk. And this was generally an exchange that was reported. A child said to him, "The Hulk has boobies," and he said, "Those aren't boobies; those are muscles." That was it. Now that's a level of political debate I think even the Hulk would find quite basic. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, well, this is where we're at now. This is the nature.
I can't believe that was written down.
Game. Yeah. But that's his game. I mean, he wants to have. He wants the debate to be about the wheels on the bus go round and round. That's what he wants.
Yeah.
So he doesn't paint it on a crate.
He doesn't want the debate to be, ultimately the whole Brexit thing, regardless of which side you're on, and I accept I'm on the Remain side and always will be, but the whole Brexit thing has been thoroughly dishonest from day one.
I mean, one side vastly more. Like, this is something that annoyed me at the start. Both sides lied. That doesn't make it better. That gives you even more of a reason to get rid of the whole fucking thing. If you're going along and you had a 100-meter dash, go, well, they're all on fucking drugs. Well, then none of them get to run. This is it. You can't suddenly go along and say, well, I think we'll find Remain lied. Where did they lie? Show me the example of where Remain said that they lied. This is it. Whereas we've had it time and time and again that has been shown legally that Vote Leave broke the law. This is fucking Boris Johnson all over. Every one of his fucking
This is the thing, is it doesn't matter.
But it
doesn't matter at the moment.
Farage this week came out.
Absolutely no value to it. I mean, ultimately, what I would say was actually the cause of this, the biggest crime in all of this, which is never really talked about seriously, is the fact that ever since Britain joined the European Union, there's been the right-wing press, which has been generally knocking the European Union about you can't have sausages anymore, and
bendy bananas,
health and safety,
and we've got to do we're not going to be allowed to drive on the left-hand side of the road. All of those kind of scenarios for years and years and years, which, to be fair, Boris, in fact, has made a living from all his life. But
he was sacked by the Telegraph for it.
But the reality is that has been the way the European Union has been presented for the majority of people's lives, all of my life. It's all they're trying to control us. And the problem with that is we're in this current mess because of all of that nonsense. That there is all sorts of things. Why would we want to leave? There's no value in leaving.
I think it's interesting to have a look at how MEPs are treated in different countries, because in a lot of other European countries, an MEP is a big deal. It would
really?
It would be an upgrade from just normal.
MP,
so you'd be an MP, and then you'd go and be an MEP. Whereas in this, an MEP, we have fucking like Nick Griffin. I mean, we see an MEP in this country as some sort of fucking reason to get racists out of the fucking country.
But promoted upwards.
This week. This week.
But this has always been the bizarre thing about. Well, there has always been problems with the European Parliament in that.
No, of course, yeah.
In that nobody has ever really worked out what value it has actually had.
Yeah.
As an institution, is it? It represents too many people. It represents 600 million people. Does it actually represent anyone?
It's more in a sort of general sense, isn't it? And this is, I will admit to knowing not that much about the EU, but the one thing I do know, purely because of my background, is the working rights chapter of the Maastricht Treaty is what stops us working 50-hour weeks. So the minute we leave the EU, there's a lot of employers going to be rubbing their hands, going, right, I can work people to death now. I think that's right.
There was an
Correct me if it's
interesting
There's an
study
argument for
from
that.
the Resolute Foundation this week with regards to why unemployment is so low. And their argument was, well, the reason that it's so low, like it's at 3% or something like this at the moment, our unemployment, which if you 5% below, it's taken as zero unemployment. But the reason is because we're so poor that we have to work.
And it also, quite a lot of people aren't in full-time employment.
No,
It counts part-time work. And
well,
also
I'm part of the gig economy. I mean, I spend my life, working in that way. I don't. The answer is, I don't know. I actually think that I really, in my mind, Brexit seems to me like a non-issue, in the sense that I've never seen the problem, but I'm not suggesting there isn't one. I've never thought that it was all the EU's fault.
Yeah, no, that's the thing.
And the difficulty is we all agree, I think, and the problem with that is that we're all on the same page. People genuinely, it's taken me a long time to come to this conclusion, but people have genuinely strong views about leaving the European Union, and those views aren't irrelevant.
But they're also entrenched from, as you point out, almost 30, 40 years of right-wing lying.
Yeah.
It also speaks to, I don't think the argument's really about the EU for a lot of people. They just hear the words migrants and free movement and think, here's my chance to finally, be open about the fact that I don't like that guy who lives up the road or whatever. It's a very simplistic take on it, and I'm sure I'm missing out quite a lot of subtlety in the
Let's
genuinely,
let's bring it back to the election.
Yeah.
Because Brexit Party, I mean, see the link there. See what I mean.
Nice,
wonderful.
put it. Nice. Yeah, that was
The
really,
Brexit Party,
yeah, that was really,
they're not contesting 317 Tory seats, which is wonderful for the everyone who applied to be a Tory MP for £100 a pop. They're not getting that money back, by the way. Farage went on radio and said that everyone who thought they were going to be an MP gave or thought they were going to stand, gave £100 to fucking the Brexit Party, and then Farage turns around and goes, actually, nah, I've done a deal with this knobhead. I'm not sitting, and it's just Tory seats, but he is going to sit in Labour seats, and we're not even going to fucking discuss the fact that Farage has already come out this week and said that he was offered, and other people were offered peerages to not fucking sit.
I heard
that is bribery, corruption.
Yeah,
but you point out it doesn't matter.
There's no smoking gun yet, though, on that.
Now,
he's claiming that happened, but there's been denials. There's also claims that the original deal that they said that they weren't going to sit in, they weren't going to contest certain seats, was not. There was no stitch-up deal between the Conservatives and the Brexit Party. There was no quid pro quo, and both sides have denied that there was any collusion on that decision.
This idea, the 317 Tory seats, are they because they're going to sit in all the Labour seats? Are they actually helping Labour there?
In what? Unpack that. Just by
sitting in only Labour seats.
Right.
Surely, if you're just sitting in the Labour seats, I mean, Tories are going to be thinking they're going to be contesting, but if Brexit Party are going to be sitting in the Labour seats, potentially they could take votes away from Labour. Mm-hmm. More likely, they're going to take votes away from Tories. So surely, sitting in all of the Labour seats...
I don't think it quite works like that. I think if you take votes away from Labour, then majorities get smaller.
Yes.
And as soon as majorities get smaller, then you get the chance for one party or another to take a seat, as opposed to Labour.
Yes.
So what I'm trying to say is, I think it hurts Labour more than it hurts the Tories. Put it like that.
Do you not think that there's going to be more Tories going to the Brexit Party than Labour going to Brexit Party?
I think there's actually going to be quite a lot of Labour voters going to the Brexit Party.
And that's another big question. That's the big question of, well, I think there are two big questions, three big questions. It's the old Spanish Inquisition.
And I've thought of another one.
Four big questions. Yeah.
Ruthless efficiency of the Pope.
Yeah. Ruthless efficient.
This is turning into fucking Sesame Street.
As I said, the Scottish Conservative seats, if they are all wiped away, whether there is a movement in the Labour heartlands in the north away from Labour in a big way, which is a possibility.
Well, they talk about Workington man, don't they?
This
patronising view the media have of, this is the typical Labour heartland.
But
voter.
if that proves to be correct, and the third thing is the Lib Dems and whether they manage to attract
useless cunts.
No, but whether they manage to attract Conservative and Labour voters and get more seats. And
what's our views on Lib Dems? Because personally, I think wind your fucking neck in.
No.
Well, the Lib Dems.
The Lib Dems, fucking hell. If I hear them go after Labour one more time, I'm there going, oh, come on. Do you not? Like, go after the Tories, for fuck's sake. Go after people in power.
Well, look, I have a lot of sympathy for the Lib Dems. And I have a lot of sympathy for the Lib Dems in the sense that they're a centrist party, which, I'll be honest, I feel as if I'm a centrist in one way or another. They're a centrist party, and they're fighting on two sides, and they always have. They're fighting. They can't be the Tories, and they can't be the Labour Party.
I mean, they've taken on a lot of Tories, though, haven't they?
Yeah, but they can't be the Tories, and they can't be the Labour Party, so they have to fight both.
But there's points and reasoning and times for doing it. Going after, the continuation of saying that the Lib Dems come out and go, the Tories and Labour, they're practically the same on Brexit. That is a fucking lie. It's either a lie or they're thick as shit. And if they truly believe that Labour and Tories stand the same on Brexit, they shouldn't be allowed in politics. Because they're not even close to being the same. Everyone, I've seen constant fucking things, and I am not a Labour voter in any way, shape or form. I think Corbyn can fuck right off. But I'll tell you now, I understand what Labour's Brexit policy is, because it isn't difficult. I've seen fucking political journalists go, oh, this is so difficult to comprehend. Really? Is it? It's your fucking job.
But look, forget... and this is where I've got to. I actually don't think the Lib Dems are playing their cards very well, personally. Mm-hmm. I think they could have played their cards better. But there are so many seats where it's either Lib Dem or Tory that I really do. What really actually annoys me is the opposing situation, which is that the Labour Party is acting in an imperial way.
Oh yeah, I agree.
And somehow the Rebel Alliance is not acting as an alliance, and that's the folly of this whole this whole process, is that if why couldn't the Labour Party and the Lib Dems and the SNP just say one seat, a Remain MP in each a Remain candidate in each, and let it be a straight Leave or Remain vote.
Yeah, I mean
that would have been
kind of a referendum by stealth, then, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's the only way, in my view, that we could stay in the European Union. That's the only way that can happen.
Labour need to stop acting like they pulled out the fucking sword from the stone.
Yeah.
And they've got some sort of right to lead. You see all of that.
Yeah,
I can't believe the Lib Dems are actually trying to win a seat. Like, fuck off, mate. I mean, they can all blow it out of their hole, really.
But this is the stupid thing. That is why they couldn't have. I sort of understand. Labour's a party of government, so therefore it has to contest every seat. You know?
Yeah.
And the Lib Dems, in the same way, have to do the same. But really, you know?
I just feel like this is what is... This is where it's, in my mind anyway, it starts to get a bit complicated, and this is probably what's putting people on is, right, okay, I want to vote broadly for Labour Party policies, but they're also sort of directing me to, if this happened, to vote for a candidate from a party I'm not particularly 100% behind because on this one, the Remain issue, and then it all starts to. This is what I can imagine people going, oh, I can't. What is this? This isn't voting.
I totally get that. I totally get the.
Well, there's moral quandaries to tactical voting now. Isn't
Yeah,
there?
Yeah. I actually get that people would vote Lib Dem because they believe in the Lib Dems, and people would vote Labour because they believe in Labour, and they resent anybody telling them to do something that they don't believe in.
Yes, and it's kind of
because I'll be honest, I don't believe in some of the things the Labour Party's come out with. You know, I just don't believe it.
I'm not saying 100% belief, like a total apostle of but that's when it starts to get a bit tricky. Like, well, why would I vote for Lib Dems? Because they Remain or what have you. It feels a bit like being corralled into doing something. This doesn't feel like I'm exercising a vote.
No,
this feels like
I totally get that.
First past the post, you ain't fucking
I totally get that.
Yeah.
I totally get that, and I totally get that people don't see their vote in. I mean, you mentioned you're going to vote Green.
Yes,
because it's a principle. You know that the Green, you're not going to be electing a Green MP.
Well, I'm also. It's also lucky because I'm in such a safe seat because first past the post isn't actually democracy. It doesn't matter what I vote for. I do not have a moral quandary.
But still, you're voting for who you believe in.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not. I don't even know who I don't even know who the fucking bloke is, or woman, or they. I honestly, I don't have a fucking clue. I'm just voting for Greens because the idea of voting for anything else makes my skin fucking crawl.
I accept that. I think and this is where I stand at the moment is I don't tend to believe. I don't tend to believe in any of them particularly, and I wouldn't be entirely comfortable about Jeremy Corbyn being Prime Minister.
No, it's
and a lot of people feel the same. But I just see him as the lesser of two evils.
Yeah,
I just see him as the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, exactly. I would take Corbyn above.
I think a lot of people feel that a Corbyn, Lib Dem, SNP compromise is a better place to be than the Tories.
The referendums.
But the problem about that is that
you look actually ill.
I actually don't think. Yeah, but you see, this is the great thing. Is the best you can hope for is a mess.
What cancer do you want?
You said. I remember you did mention this in the last, and it's based on the idea that to pursue that metaphor a bit better, that there is a good form of cancer to get. Like you're flicking through a winter catalogue, going, well, prostate cancer seems like the best one. It's just to me, this whole thing now just feels like a choice. Someone's coming up to you and go, face or bum? Pardon, what? Where do you want it, face or bum? I don't want it either. Well, you got to choose.
It's
that. Oh, okay.
But
face,
that's the problem. I mean, that is the problem. Which is the lesser of two evils? And the problem is that if you start with which is the lesser of two evils,
there's only down from there.
Why won't the lesser of two evils, let's say for argument's sake, in my mind, the Lib Dems and the Labour Party, why won't they actually somehow coordinate an election where a majority is actually going to happen.
Well, the thing is, it's not just Remain. I mean, for me, it's stopping the Tories.
Yeah.
That
No,
for
but-
me is
but
a
you see,
fucking thing. I would leave EU if I could stop the Tories. If I could stop the Tories for another 5 years, I would fucking. I would all for go for a Brexit. But this is where it continues lies. But this is the lies of it all. Like the big one this week was Labour's free broadband for everyone.
Yeah. Oh yes.
Everyone's been talking about it. Oh, everyone gets free broadband. That's not happening in 5 years, mate. It's a pointless fucking policy. Honestly, you ain't gonna get that done in 5 years.
No, but free broadband. I like free broadband. I like the idea of free broadband.
Yeah, but
I thought it was a great idea.
Yeah, but whether or not it's a great idea, it's not happening.
No,
It's simply not happening.
I accept that. But this is the problem about the Corbyn and McDonnell, is that the amount of money they're talking about spending is so huge. Where are they going to get it from? And I accept
taxing every rich man.
but I accept it's possible. I'd love it to happen, but I'm not sure it's possible.
I'm very old-fashioned in this respect. I just think, well, let's just stop building missiles. That's billions of pounds right there. Stop having missiles for a war we can't win.
But we get a lot of money from building all of those missiles.
Oh, I'm not talking about. I just meant just having them. I understand what you're saying. We are the leading arms trade.
We need to build them to sell them.
Well, yes.
Otherwise, we're just giving IOUs to everyone around the world.
That's true.
IOU one Tomahawk.
I guess it's that and Downton Abbey are the things we the most.
I mean, xenophobia, but we don't get rid of a lot of that because of Russia.
Yeah.
I accept that. I mean, look, but the difficulty. I mean, it just really.
I think it's a good thing to aim for. I think it's a very reasonable point, even though it is quite a lunatic thing to focus on. It tells you a lot, again, about the state of politics and the state of the nation, that this has garnered more attention than any policy on transport or healthcare. It's like, well, travelling here, it took me 2 hours.
What's your opinion on transport?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Ashley. Yes, I got quite a lot to say about this. Having spent 2 hours crossing London this morning, because transport in this benighted island nation can't find its arse with both hands. I feel quite strongly.
Morning.
It's Saturday morning. I don't think that's an issue.
That's an excuse.
Do you not think that's not a reason, is it? It's Saturday morning. Oh, you can't board the travel network. It's not ready for use whenever's necessary because it's Saturday fucking morning. Oh, pardon me for wanting to travel on Saturday morning. How presumptuous of me.
Yes.
Planned engineering work. So forgive me for not checking with TfL whether it's convenient for them.
I would say that for planned engineering works, you should check that. City planner. You've got the internet. You've got many issues. You've got many things to have a look at.
The onus isn't on me to check whether there is a network.
It is literally on you at that
It's not literally on me. It's them to provide a network.
What do you want? Some form of fucking like with Muslim prayer, but instead it's the TfL.
I'd like a sign up at the overground station actually telling me there are no underground services.
Where did you get on?
I got on at Kensal Rise Station. They said
that doesn't sound like a real place.
Well, it doesn't feel like a real place. I will tell you that. It's very gentrified. I often feel like I'm living in a hipster's wet dream, but it is a real place. Yes. Anyway. But my point being, it's quicker. Pre-broadway. Oh, it'll be quicker for you to get an episode of Fleabag than it will be for you to travel from Coventry to Rugby. That just seems like, why is that important? I appreciate I'm ignoring the point there that many people do rely on broadband, including me. And as I say that, I realise what a ridiculous point that is.
I'm kind of. I like the free broadband. I kind of agree that the rail system doesn't work. I do all of these things. I'm on board with. I also,
which is more than anyone else with TfL this morning. Let me tell you.
Unlike TfL, but I'm kind of on board with all of that sort of stuff. But I actually think one of the big things about politics at the moment is the fact that we've had a huge depression. The banking crisis of 2008 has been the fundamental thing that has happened to everyone, to the world. As a consequence, we're kind of living through the Great Depression. again.
I disagree slightly, but continue.
And what has happened is centrist politics cannot answer that question. Because centrist politics really, even centre-left or centre-right politics is the politics of the status quo, really, ultimately. And they can't solve the problem. So you've got loonies on either side of the equation saying we can solve the problem. We've got the answers. The problem is that you don't believe they've got the answers. You just believe it. You don't believe Boris Johnson's got the answer. He's a pantomime figure. In some ways, do you believe Jeremy Corbyn's got the answer? He might do it. It might work out that way. His heart is in the right place. He believes in the right things. Question really remains, though. Which side are you on? And it's a civil war.
And Ashley's right. We are choosing between Islamophobia and anti-Semitism at the minute. And it's like, well, that's not a choice.
Yeah, and this is where and you talk about 2008 and 2008 massive thing. This week we dodged out of a recession. We just dodged because last quarter was minus. 2 minuses make a recession. We didn't get a minus this time. Now that was despite seeing the biggest year-on-year slowdown in nearly a decade. So the ONS said that 0.3% growth for the third quarter signalled the economy is slowing. 0.3% puts annual GDP at 1%, down from the 1.3% calculated at the end of the second quarter. Now, 1% will be the weakest since 2010, which was prior to the Brexit referendum. Now, before the shit show of 2008, the average economic growth in this country was 2% plus. Yeah. We have not had 2% since then.
No.
Now, the problem with the 2008 and what happened afterwards is austerity. Nothing else. It is austerity. That is what's fucked the country more than anything.
But you could argue, you could argue it whichever way you want it. The reality,
no. Economically, I mean, if you compare it to something like Portugal, which is normally my fucking go-to with this particular conversation, because Portugal, unlike a lot of different countries, and Portugal are part of the PIGS, which is Portugal, Italy, Ireland, Greece, and Spain, the 5 fucked countries in Europe after the 2008 financial crash. Portugal, unlike all the others, they put money into the economy instead of austerity. They grew very well. They did very well out of it. Not fantastic, but that is how it should have been done. Austerity had nothing to do. Austerity was not an economic principle to solve what we did. Austerity was nothing more than a way to attempt to kill poor people in more fun and inventive ways. That is all it was, a way of selling stuff over to their rich friends. There is no argument for austerity for being good, and that is a continuation. That is why we are still facing at the moment the economic problems of austerity, not the 2008 crash. We should be above the 2008 crash now. 10 years of lost growth.
Okay.
Could I just, sorry to interrupt, can I just pick up on something here that you mentioned earlier, the official definition of recession? Because part of me wants to respond with that with saying, well, whenever anybody says that, he's like, well...
Too low.
No. Just my initial response is, so what? Even if we're not in a recession, we're still not doing great.
Oh no, I agree, and it's all terminology.
And
it felt, and whether it's an age thing, I felt like I've been in recession for 15 years. Well, 10 years now, at least, ever since I left my day job.
I mean,
that has had a big effect.
Recession or comedy? Which one are we doing?
Yeah.
But we are still not where we were prior to the recession in anything. Wage growth, GDP per capita.
I'm not. Ultimately, I'm not. I accept austerity was the wrong thing to do, in hindsight.
But it's continuing now.
But ultimately, I do believe. Look at the world economy. Don't. The British economy. Forget the British economy for a moment. Look at the world economy.
It's. I mean, if we're taking the world economy with regards to also looking at us comparatively,
yeah,
because you have to look at us comparatively. Not great.
What do you mean not going?
The OD and I used to know this verbatim. We are towards the bottom of nearly every way you're looking at growth.
Okay.
Especially like in the EU, growth and everything else. We're not doing well. And this is the thing. You can
But you look at
the world isn't doing well, but we're doing worse.
Yeah, but we were doing better at one stage.
Oh no, yeah, before
Not before austerity, because
austerity's ravaged us.
But the French have done extremely badly historically, in comparison to the rest of Europe, even. And
how's Greece getting on these days? You don't know much about them.
They work more hours a week than anyone in the EU.
Yeah, because that sort of it suddenly occurred to me when we were talking about the EU that was a huge thing.
Well, they're starting to pay tax now.
Right, so they're actually
doing fine.
Right.
Now it turns out I've just got the 5-minute warning, so we are coming to the end of this.
And what have we achieved?
I think a delightful fucking afternoon.
Yeah, I think we've proved beyond all reasonable doubt that planned engineering works is not a phrase I want to hear when you're not running anything. And I appreciate that there's ways and means, but I'm not.
I'll be honest. I thought this went incredibly quickly.
It did. Unlike my journey here.
Do you have right? So as we end, I know you've done a lot of research. So I apologise for not being able to come to any more
It's really
stories.
just this bit. this is the. But yeah, no. The only thing I would note is I meant to mention this earlier on, but how do people feel about this?
We can't discuss it, so just say what it is.
William Boyd and John le Carre say they're not going to vote Labour, and I'm sure that's a massive impact.
I don't know who they are. So.
Well, I don't know about you. I feel gutted that now that the creator of Smiley isn't going to vote Labour, that surely is going to.
Yeah, it's over.
It's done.
Yeah.
It's
over
done, Corbyn.
Do you have anything to plug? Do you have anything to plug? You can plug into the camera now.
Oh, right. Thank you very much. Where are we now? I don't know what date.
16th of November.
16th of November. On the 21st of November, I'll be doing a gig in Catford, and I'll also be doing a weekend gig in, I can't remember where it is. So this isn't
That's
very
going to be useful.
Yeah. So, just find me on Facebook. Find out there. Yeah.
And yourself?
I'm doing a gig at the Bill Murray on the 25th, Monday the 25th, at 6:45 p.m, and I expect thousands of people to come.
But John le Carre isn't welcome
and
at any of our gigs.
And also your the film.
Oh yeah, we've got the heist movie. Yeah, sorry.
To fucking
yeah.
Spoon feed these knobheads.
Yeah. I've got the heist movie, which is called HADEN'S Heist Movie, which, if you have a look online, is promoted and lauded by thousands of people, and you'll love it. It's 15 minutes, by the way, so it's not a movie.
Right.
What about you, Ashley? Where are you
couple
next?
of bits, final bits of news that we didn't get through.
Mm-hmm.
The BBC's in-house commercial team has posted sponsored content it produced for Huawei, the controversial Chinese telecom giant. So that's nice of BBC. Home Secretary Priti Patel has been a cunt again. She said that the Tories would reduce immigration as part of a points-based system. Don't know what the point-based system is yet, but they have been saying that for 10 years, and they've never done it because they're lying cunts. There's stuff on Bolivia, but we don't have the time or the care
We
to
never
go
did
through
the Bolivian
I
material.
really wanted to, but we never had the opportunity. A group of mums in Springburn, Glasgow, have launched a new food bank for babies. So it's poverty, but cuter. What else we got? Some of UK's most popular health websites are sharing people's sensitive data, including medical symptoms, diagnosis, drug names, and menstrual and fertility information with dozens of companies around the world, so that should be fun for everyone. Gambia has filed a case at the International Court of Justice accusing Myanmar of committing genocide against the Rohingya minority, so that's to be interesting to keep an eye on. UK academics are facing a backlash for encouraging students to vote. It is against the law for universities to not encourage people to vote. It is legally binding for them to do so. Human Rights Watch have called on the Nigerian government to ban chaining as is condemned the terrible abuse faced by thousands of people with mental health issues. The cost of housing homeless families in temporary accommodation has risen by 78% in 5 years to close to £1.1 billion. 30 potential modern slavery victims have been referred to the Home Office each day after a case surge, suggesting that more people are keeping an eye out for modern slavery. So I want to thank my guests, and as always, we're done.
Thank you.